Thanks for joining us for OU Nightly. I'm Kelsey Hovenitz.
And I'm Madison Lewis. We're one day away from Election Day, and it's already a record-breaking one for Oklahoma. The number of people voting early, both in person and by mail, is higher than ever before. OU Nightly's Kara Carbs breaks down the numbers.
In the 2016 election, the Cleveland County Election Board sent out 14,000 absentee ballots, and for this election, they sent out nearly 40,000.
And as a state, we broke all the records.
The election board has already received back 30,000 absentee ballots and are working to process them all for tomorrow. As well as breaking absentee ballot records, Cleveland County also had a record turnout for early voting in person, with about 15,000 people at the polls.
We hope that absentee by mail and in-person voting took a lot of the pressure off the polling places.
The election board will be processing ballots this afternoon and from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. tomorrow. If you mailed your ballot in, you can check the status of your ballot online to ensure it got to the election board. All ballots not received by the election board by tomorrow at 7 p.m. will not be counted.
Is after we receive it, is that we have to scan in this barcode. And then that barcode gives them voter history credit. So we know that their ballot's been returned. And they know, they can go to their voter portal and check.
The deadline to return your ballot in person to the election board is today at 5 p.m. However, if you miss that deadline, you can take your ballot to the post office. It's recommended you get your ballot to the post office before 6 p.m. tomorrow because the last drop-off of ballots for the election board will be collected by then. Kara Carbs, OU Nightly.
You can go to the OK Voter portal online to check your registration status, see a sample ballot, and find the location of your polling place. You must be in line at your polling place before 7 p.m. to vote in this election.
And final preparations are underway for tomorrow's Election Day. Caitlin Deggs has that story and the rest of today's headlines from around the world. Caitlin.
Thank you, Kelsey. Both presidential candidates are campaigning across the country today ahead of tomorrow's election. Joe Biden held a rally in Cleveland, Ohio earlier this morning and will spend the rest of the day campaigning in Pennsylvania. President Trump will hold 5 rallies in 4 states today, beginning in North Carolina and ending tonight in Michigan. The candidates are hoping to sway last-minute voters in battleground states, states that are important in securing an election victory. A federal judge in Texas rejects a challenge to invalidate drive-through votes collected in Harris County. A group of Republicans filed the petition to toss out nearly 130,000 votes in the heavily Democratic Houston area last Tuesday, arguing that drive-through voting violates the Constitution. Judge Andrew Hanen, who presided over the case, reasoned that invalidating votes could cause mass confusion among the people who have already voted, or that people may not have the opportunity to go back and vote again. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson announces plans for a second national lockdown. The number of cases in the UK has surpassed 1 million since the beginning of the pandemic.
Number of patients, by no means all of them elderly, by the way, would mean that doctors and nurses would be forced to choose which patients to treat.
Johnson hopes that the lockdown will help control the outbreak and ease the burden of healthcare professionals. Madison, back to you.
Thanks, Caitlin. Here in Oklahoma, another 4-digit day for new COVID cases. The Oklahoma State Health Department reports 1,084 new cases. That brings the total number of active cases to just under 16,000. There are 9 new deaths reported in the state, bringing the COVID death toll to 1,354. And Kelsey, it's been feeling a little bit warmer today than it was this time last week.
Michaela Smith gives us our first look at our forecast.
Yeah, guys, it's been great today, and for Election Day tomorrow, it's really going to be a beautiful day. Starting off at 8 o'clock in the morning, you may want to grab a jacket if you're heading out to go vote at the polls. It's going to be sunny, but again, 45 degrees, but it's going to warm up as we progress throughout the day. By 6 p.m., just an hour before those polls close, it's going to be 65 degrees and sunny with those winds coming out of the south, so it's going to be perfect time to go out there and do your part as an American and vote. Now, coming up, I'll tell you more about our voting weather, how we're staying dry for the rest of this week, and how we have a pleasant, gorgeous week ahead. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Michaela. Most people are thinking about tomorrow's presidential election, but there's another election happening on OU's campus. Stay with us to find out how this year's SGA election will look a little bit different.
Plus, many businesses are preparing for Election Day very differently than in years past. Find out what precautions are being taken straight ahead on OU Nightly.
Thanks for joining us for OU Nightly. I'm Shannon Earhart.
And I'm Audrey Goodson. Our weather team is tracking severe weather as it heads into the state.
Let's go to Megan Gold for the latest.
Audrey and Shannon, watches and warnings popping up this evening as those severe weather chances get closer and closer to us here in Norman. You can see this pink region in a thunderstorm watch, this area right here in a flooding watch. But what we're watching right now is this storm down in northwest Texas does have the potential to move up towards us here in Norman. And what we're going to do is show it to you on radar. Actually, a tornado confirmed on the ground right now in this area right here, and actually a very impressive supercell as it moves off to the east. It does have the potential to move up into Oklahoma, and that's what we're going to be watching. Here is the track. You can see Holiday 6:55 p.m. Iowa Park at 7:02. But any storms that move up into this region does have the potential to become tornadic. You want to stick with us because we'll have all the updates coming up in my full forecast. Back to you.
Well, thanks, Megan. We'll check back here in a few minutes. The CDC issued new guidance for outdoor mask use for fully vaccinated Americans today. OU Nightly Sophia Olivas is live from the South Oval with how that's going to impact OU.
Thanks, Audrey. Now, here on campus, we will be wearing masks for the foreseeable future. Only 15% of Oklahomans between the ages of 18 and 35 have been vaccinated. And while OU's chief COVID officer says he's ready to relax COVID restrictions, most students fall under this unvaxxed demographic. To make any changes to OU's indoor COVID guidelines, we need to see higher vaccination rates first.
I can't imagine that we won't require masks when you're in university facilities, but outdoors, I think, for most events, perhaps we can start to think about loosening those restrictions.
And the university announced today that all OU employees will be expected to return to their fully on-campus schedules by August 2nd. Reporting live, Sophia Olivas, OU Nightly.
Thanks, Sophia. Oklahoma's COVID cases are down from the number we saw at the first of the year, and experts credit vaccines for helping lower them. Today, the state health department reports 115 new cases. Oklahoma has a total of 10,122 active cases of COVID right now, and the CDC says a little more than 8,200 Oklahomans have died from COVID-19. So far, around 914,000 Oklahomans are fully vaccinated against COVID-19.
And when it comes to those who have had the Johnson & Johnson single dose or both shots for Moderna or Pfizer, there are new guidelines from the CDC that open things up. Dayton Deller is going to have that story and the headlines from around the world in News Center. Dayton?
Yes, Audrey. Today, President Biden announced that the CDC says that fully vaccinated Americans no longer need to wear a mask outside unless they're in a large crowd with strangers. This comes after the growing number of people receiving the vaccine and the decline of COVID cases in the U.S. Biden urges people to get vaccinated so people can do things more safely indoors and outdoors. He thanks the American people for the work they've done combating the virus and said July 4th is the goal for when Americans can hold small Independence Day gatherings. And although cases are declining here in the U.S., things are looking very different for India. The country broke global records after reporting over 352,000 new cases on Monday, inching them closer to 200,000 COVID-related deaths. This afternoon, President Biden announced that he intends to share vaccines as well as other aid with India as they continue to battle COVID-19.
The problem is right now we have to make sure we have other vaccines like Novavax and others coming on probably. And I think we'll be in a position to be able to share vaccines as well as know-how with other countries who are in real need.
Biden has not yet said when his administration will begin sharing doses with India, but hopes to very soon. And today, the FBI has opened a federal civil rights investigation after last week's shooting of Andrew Brown Jr. in North Carolina. Brown was a 42-year-old black man who was shot 4 times in the arm by authorities, serving a drug-related search and arrest warrant. He then tried to drive away, and he was shot for a 5th time in the head and was killed, causing him to crash into a tree. Officials have given the public little information about the shooting and say they are legally prevented to speak or show body cam footage without a court order. The shooting has prompted protests calling for justice and transparency. And finally, Ed Gonzalez, the Harris County, Texas sheriff that criticized President Trump's immigration policies, is President Biden's choice to head up ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Dayton. Oklahoma ended all statewide mandates for COVID-19, although not everyone has been vaccinated. OU Nightly's Elise Jones reports on how schools in Norman can continue to keep students safe while having gatherings.
Many Oklahomans, including college students, are now able to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. But not all students attending school in person have this luxury. Those in elementary through high school in the state cannot receive the vaccine at this time.
Is just because all the teachers get vaccinated doesn't mean that it's a safe environment. Like, we should be more worried about the students.
Those 16 and older will be able to receive the Pfizer vaccine, but you must be 18 years old to receive the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines.
I still double mask all day, and I try to keep my distance and stuff because I know that not everybody else is in the same position as me, and I want to be respectful of other people just as much as I want them to value my safety.
Norman Public Schools is a subdivision of the state, meaning they don't follow city guidelines but make their own decisions regarding events such as spring break, prom, and graduation.
Norman's Mayor Bria Clark said it's easy for many people to write off prom and graduation, but she remembers how special those moments are.
Those are huge milestones and you can never get them back. So I hope we're able to do those things. People want these things. If they want prom and graduation, then they need to get vaccinated.
Norman Public Schools plans to have an outdoor graduation and socially distanced prom. Phase 4 of vaccinations includes all Oklahoma residents, meaning students may be eligible in the near future. Elise Jones, OU Nightly.
Phase 4 is now open and Governor Stitt hopes to have a more normal summer.
Under newly signed Senate Bill 368, churches and all other religious institutions are now considered essential. Senator David Bullard, who authored the bill, also known as the Oklahoma Religious Freedom Act, says the fact that many churches nation and statewide were essentially and unconstitutionally shut down or threatened must be addressed, and our freedoms must be protected. The new law will stop any governmental entity from declaring religious institutions and related activities as non-essential. This means the closures of these institutions for health or security purposes is also prohibited if those actions are greater than what is imposed on a private entity. The law goes into effect July 1st.
And NASA's Ingenuity helicopter makes history for the third time this week. The copter has shattered expectations and reached new heights, literally.
But it's not just Ingenuity making headlines in space. NASA's in the works of building their most powerful rocket yet. Find out what we have there for the new development when it skyrockets.
Welcome back to OU Nightly. We were pretty dry today, but those dark clouds beginning to roll in, and man, is it muggy out there. That dew point sitting at 66 degrees. Temperatures falling into the 70s and not a bit of sun. And what we're watching right now is what's called this dry line. It's actually retreating back to the west, but this is making very favorable conditions for strong to severe storms this evening. And we already have one down in northwestern Texas. This is moving off to the east. You can see the track right here, and it does have a very impressive hook to it, a large destructive tornado on the ground right now. And anything that follows this storm is going to move up into Lawton, Chickasha, Tuttle, and that does have the potential to be severe. Colton Williams is actually up on the 3rd floor looking off to the southwest as the storm begins to approach here in the Oklahoma City metro and Norman areas. Colton, what are you seeing outside right now?
Yeah, Megan, certainly a dangerous situation ongoing in northwestern Texas. You really got to hope that folks are heeding the warning, you know, a large, dangerous, violent tornado heading towards a populated area. Certainly a dangerous situation. Now, we're positioned here. I want to show you. We're looking off to the southwest. I will say it certainly looks darker towards that direction. Now, we had a peak of sunshine over the last 30 minutes or so. As that has gone away now, cloud cover has moved back in. We can't see that far. Though that storm is 50,000 feet tall, we cannot see the thunder tops associated with that supercell. Megan Gold's going to have it all as far as threats, timing, who sees what. Megan Gold, back to you.
Thanks, Colton. And that is important to note with these conditions this evening. This area in Brown has the strongest potential to see those isolated strong tornadoes, but can't rule it out in this green area right here. But like Colton said, very dangerous conditions due to the fact that most of these tornadoes will be rain wrapped. But this is what we're looking at for our future radar. Like I showed you with that storm just moments ago, this is going to begin to move off to the northeast for this evening. Plenty of chances for some strong wind and even some destructive hail, so you're going to want to bring your cars indoors if at all possible. This rain will continue throughout the evening and into the early morning hours. Tomorrow morning also has the chance to be a very strong storm day, but this is what we're looking at for this evening and actually for tomorrow as well. Flooding threat will be there along with wind, hail, and that tornado threat is low, but doesn't mean we don't have the potential to see those strong storms. This is what we're looking at in terms of rainfall totals here over the next couple of days. Definitely have the chance to see some flooding risk, so you're going to want to keep this in mind. Do not drive into high standing water. And again, this is our risk for Wednesday, very similar to what we saw today. Overnight tonight, those lows going to be in the 60s and those highs tomorrow again in the 70s, along with those chances for that rain. And here's a look at that 7-day forecast. Sunshine returns later this week. Ladies, back to you at the desk.
Thanks for joining us for OU Nightly. I'm Shannon Earhart.
And I'm Audrey Goodson. Tonight we begin with more Oklahomans, perhaps even you, who are eligible for the vaccine. Mackenzie Gladney joins us live with more. Mackenzie?
Thanks, ladies. This is exciting news as 2.5 million Oklahomans are eligible to receive their COVID-19 vaccine.
This is an excellent opportunity for us to work together to really get a hold of COVID-19 and move us forward to better days.
Starting today, Phase 3 priority group is now eligible to sign up and receive a vaccine dose, and this includes OU students.
I think, we had a lot of concerns about our younger residents maybe not wearing masks the way they should, maybe not social distancing the way they should. My phone was ringing off the hook every Friday and Saturday night. And so I think this will provide a great sense of peace and hope for the Norman community.
Those who are eligible are those working in education from childcare to college and students 18 and over. Plus the largest group of all, essential workers, which includes restaurants, retail stores, grocery stores, hospitality, and many other areas.
Everyone needs to get it. I know that there are some reservations about vaccines, but if we truly want to get to herd immunity, which is a mix of both people who've had it and people who've been vaccinated, we need to do this.
Health officials continue to urge Oklahomans to sign up for the vaccine now, whether you think you're eligible or not. Now, if you're still trying to figure out how to get vaccinated or where to get vaccinated, head over to OUNightly.com. We're going to have all those resources for you. Reporting live, Mackenzie Gladney, OU Nightly.
Thanks, Mackenzie. As there continues to be a slow in Oklahoma coronavirus cases, the state reports its new COVID-19 numbers for today. The Oklahoma State Department of Health reports around 11,600 active cases, including 270 new cases. Along with the new cases, the CDC reports around 7,000 COVID deaths in the state, and the state of Oklahoma reports 167 newly confirmed deaths as of today.
With more people being eligible for the vaccine in Phase 3, the Oklahoma State Department of Health made their website more accessible. Their COVID-19 vaccine portal is now available in Spanish, making it easier for Spanish-speaking Oklahomans to schedule an appointment. Cleveland County Health Department Sarah King explains why breaking down the language barrier is important for vaccine distribution in the community.
We know that access to especially under-resourced communities or communities that maybe face higher proportions of incidence of COVID, it's more important to get this vaccine to them. But when we have kind of restricted measures or we don't have adequate tools for that to happen, there's just a natural barrier on top of so many other barriers.
You can visit the vaccine portal through the State Department of Health's website.
After a one-day delay, jury selection started today in the trial of Derek Chauvin. The former Minneapolis police officer is charged with the murder of George Floyd. Camila Bernal is in Minneapolis with many highlights from the courtroom.
Good morning, members of the jury panel.
Derek Chauvin, wearing a gray suit and black mask, sits next to his defense attorney taking notes as potential jurors for his trial are questioned.
Did you see a video of Mr. Floyd being arrested by the Minneapolis Police Department?
Oh, yes.
Video of George Floyd's arrest shows Chauvin, then a Minneapolis police officer, with his knee on Floyd's neck for nearly 8 minutes. Floyd's death led to widespread protests against police brutality and racism. Chauvin was fired and charged with second-degree unintentional murder and second-degree manslaughter, to which he has pleaded not guilty.
However, during trial, charges in the normal course might be added to or subtracted from these charges.
This including a charge of third-degree murder that the prosecution hopes to get reinstated. The defense filing a petition with the state Supreme Court to keep the current charges. But as higher courts work through the charges, the trial judge and lawyers attempt to find impartial jurors.
I don't know that I can promise impartiality.
I'm going to excuse you from this case.
You made a decision already.
Yes.
You are released from your jury service.
12 jurors and 4 alternates need to be seated before the trial begins.
Juror number 2, you will be on this jury.
The process is expected to take up to 3 weeks. In Minneapolis, I'm Camila Bernal.
So far, we know 2 jurors were selected and 5 others were dismissed today.
The royal family gave a brief statement in response to Oprah's interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Dayton Deller has more on that story and the rest of what's going on around the world.
Thank you, Shannon. Just days after Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's interview with Oprah Winfrey, Buckingham Palace has broken their silence. The couple expressed the royal family's concerns about their child's skin color, which sparked accusations of racism amongst the millions of viewers that tuned in last night. The royal family has said they are saddened to learn the challenges that the couple have faced, and the issues raised about racism in the palace are concerning and will not be addressed by the family in private. After more than 100,000 migrants, including 3,200 unaccompanied children, were encountered at the U.S.-Mexico border in the past 4 weeks, the Biden administration has made a statement today on their new policies going forward.
They are working over the course of every day since then on putting in place policies that can help address what we're seeing and help ensure that we are keeping these kids safe and moving them as quickly as possible from Border Patrol facilities to shelters.
The Biden administration hopes to give these children educational resources, health resources, mental health resources, and legal aid. Early this morning, a Tampa police officer, Jesse Madsen, died after a collision involving a vehicle traveling the wrong way. After multiple calls of a driver traveling south on I-275 north, the white car struck Madsen's vehicle, killing both drivers. Madsen was a highly decorated officer, receiving 7 life-saving awards in his 16 years with the Tampa Police Department. Madsen leaves behind his wife and 4 children. And in other news, today, Vanessa Bryant won her case to obtain the names of the officers that took photos at the Kobe Bryant crash site in January of 2020. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you, Dayton. And Audrey, I don't know about you, but it was pretty windy walking to class today.
Oh, I felt like I was going to blow over. Colton, is that windy weather here to stay?
Yeah, Shannon and Audrey. Well, we are live here on the South Oval at the University of Oklahoma's campus, and it's really a gorgeous afternoon on this Tuesday. You take a look behind me now, really overcast skies. It feels really, really nice outside. It is a bit breezy, and well, that is leading to some problems across the state right now. You see our wind gusts all across the state going to be around the upper 30s and the lower 40s. Those will gust to those speeds at times, and that has led to a wind advisory for most of our state. You see all up and down I-44 now a wind advisory and northward, and if you even notice out in the far northwestern portion of the state into the western portion of Texas and out in the south central portion of Kansas, you see a couple of different types of warnings: a red flag warning, a fire weather warning. Look for that to be extended into western Oklahoma into tomorrow, but all of that will be coming up in your main weather segment here in just a few moments. So Megan will have all that and more coming up right after this. Thank you, guys.
China and Russia come together to build a joint lunar space station. The countries plan to open the scientific research station to all countries who are interested.
And OU Healthcare takes steps towards creating its first unified academic health system. Stay with us for more.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us for OU Nightly. I'm Dylan Rivera.
And I'm Kelsey Hovenitz. We begin tonight with a startling number in the global COVID pandemic.
The global count of coronavirus cases is now passing 40 million. Cases in the United States have already surpassed 8 million and is averaging 55,000 new cases per day. Even with numbers that high, Dr. Anthony Fauci says a nationwide lockdown is not the way forward.
Universal wearing of masks, keeping a distance, avoiding congregate settings.
Although region-wide shutdowns are taking place in many European countries, in the U.S., experts say the key is following public health guidelines and avoiding groups of 10 or more people at a time.
And while Dr. Fauci was making that statement and addressing the National Academy of Medicine, President Trump had some harsh words about his guidance during the COVID pandemic. During a conference call with his campaign staff this morning, NPR reports that the president called the government's top infectious disease expert a disaster. When asked about his comments later in the day, the president offered a toned-down response.
Sometimes he says things that are a little bit off and they get built up, unfortunately, but he's a nice guy. I like him, but he's called a lot of bad calls.
Those on the call say Trump also added that people don't want to hear about the pandemic and are saying just leave us alone to public health experts.
Looking at Oklahoma's COVID-19 numbers, as of today, the Oklahoma State Health Department says that there are over 100,000 total cases with 14,533 active cases and 1,173 total deaths. The city of Norman reports almost 4,000 total cases with 19 new cases and 42 total deaths. And the University of Oklahoma reports 362 faculty, students, and staff in isolation, with 71 positive cases, 45 with symptoms, and 196 exposed to COVID-19.
And a cold start to the day this morning, and now there's a chance of snow for parts of Oklahoma.
Thomas Schmidt is tracking it for us. He joins us with a first look at the forecast. Thomas?
Well, that's right. You guys are exactly right, Kelsey, Dylan. There is going to be, we are looking at some much colder weather coming in for the middle of next week, just ahead of your Halloween. Could see the first freeze and some snow for some folks in Oklahoma. But taking a live look outside right now, 58 degrees here in Norman, and Idabel down in southeastern Oklahoma still hanging on to a 72. So we are fairly warmer and fairly above that 32-degree mark we could be seeing coming up next week. So we did see some showers across the state yesterday, and now those are long gone into eastern Oklahoma, out into Arkansas. And looking ahead, we are seeing the 80s going to be returning, and we're also tracking a second cold front coming through. And yes, I hear you, snow is possible for next week just ahead of Halloween. I'll have the latest for you coming up in just a bit. Dylan, Kelsey, back to you.
Thank you, Thomas. A record number of early votes has shown us that the 2020 election is going to look a lot different from previous elections. Caitlin Deggs joins us in the News Center with that story and the rest of today's headlines from around the world.
Nearly 30 million Americans headed to the polls to cast early ballots for this year's presidential election. This number is 6 times higher than it was at this point during the 2016 election. Texas leads the country with more than 4 million votes already cast, and California and Florida are close behind. Democrats have cast 50% of early votes compared with 36% cast by Republicans. And Democrats and Republicans are working to reach an agreement on an economic stimulus package. This comes after Nancy Pelosi set a deadline for tomorrow in order for lawmakers to have enough time to pass the bill before the election. Congress last passed a stimulus bill in March, but many of its provisions have since expired. Democrats are looking for $2.2 trillion in funding, while the White House proposed $1.8 trillion. And the U.S. charges 6 Russian intelligence officers in connection with worldwide cyber attacks.
December of 2015 and 2016, the conspirators launched destructive malware attacks against the electric power grid in the Ukraine. These were the first reported destructive malware attacks against the control systems.
The team was designed to direct attention away from investigations into the Kremlin. Dylan and Kelsey, back to you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Over the weekend, thousands marched across D.C. in protest for women's rights. Emma Sears has the story in Washington.
Frustrated and demanding change, thousands gathered at Freedom Plaza to protest Supreme Court nominee Judge Amy Coney Barrett.
It was hypocrisy for them to try to push this nomination of anyone.
Among those who participated in the march was Oklahoman Reverend Sherry Dickerson, who believes that this march is more important than ever.
This election actually is much more crucial than that in November of 2016, because we now know the deliberate and intentional plans to destroy many of the values that they said this country was actually founded upon.
Women from all across the nation stood up on Saturday, demanding for their voices to be heard.
There are going to be over 400 sister marches all across the country.
Due to the pandemic, the Women's March of Oklahoma decided to cancel their march, but they are still focused on finding a way to make sure their voices are heard.
To activate and use people power and have a day of action. Have them calling their senators to say, please do not participate or vote to affirm or confirm Amy Barrett.
With the possible Supreme Court confirmation just days away, tensions are rising on all sides. And the only thing that is certain is that what is to come is unprecedented. Emma Sears, Gaylord News, Washington.
Though the march is over, people who are interested in getting involved with the organization can find more information on their website, womensmarch.com.
And Cleveland County District Court resumed jury trials this morning, of course with many new procedures due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Jurors are required to wear masks, shields, and gloves. Their temperatures will be checked and they will be screened for COVID-19 symptoms before entering the courthouse. They'll sit in socially distanced small groups with the windows open in the courtroom. The last jury trial in Cleveland County was held 8 months ago and looked very different from today's trial.
Norman residents now have the option to pay their bills in a much more convenient fashion. Find out what system the city launched today in order to make payments a bit easier to manage.
And plus, a record number of Americans didn't make their housing payment last month. We'll tell you why when OU Nightly continues.
From Studio D on the campus of the University of Oklahoma, this is Sooner Sports Pad, brought to you by Slim Chickens. And now, here's your host, Sydney Bollier.
Good evening. Welcome to Sooner Sports Pad. I'm your host for tonight, Sydney Bollier, and I'm alongside our veteran, Mr. Kemper Ball, and a new face, Miss Elise Jones, that will be joining us next semester. Now the Sooner fans had out their brooms at Marita Hines Field this weekend, and you know what that means? A sweep over the number 7 Texas Longhorns. Now get this, the Sooners didn't just beat Texas, they demolished them, taking out in run rule victories all 3 games. Freshman pitcher Nicole May grabbed her 11th win pitching for OU. After pitching 4.1 innings in a shutout, she made sure to throw up her horns down. Meanwhile, Woman's Gym went down south to Fort Worth to grab some hardware as if they didn't have enough already. The ladies ended the weekend as the NCAA national runner-ups behind Michigan, losing by less than a point. Senior Anastasia Webb finished her career as an all-around NCAA national champion and also grabbed 5 NCAA All-Americans, which if you count right, that's on every single event. As for the men, they finished as the NCAA national runner-ups as well, bringing home their own hardware. And we'll talk about it later. Captain Gage Dyer went all out. Now let me throw out this crazy stat about the men's gymnastics team. Since 2001 at national championships, they've made podium every single year. That's right. Now with all this spring success, I almost forgot we have a football team that we'll be seeing in a few days at the spring game. Now what I want to know from you two is, who do you think is going to stand out at the spring game?
Well, I know. Good question. There's a lot to be excited about with this upcoming team. I think a lot of people are excited to see the young guys, the newcomers, the freshmen, but I'm singling out 3 guys that are newcomers but not freshmen. I'm talking about the Tennessee transfers. Now, this trio of players all made an impact with the Volunteers last year, and they are headlined by running back Eric Gray. Now, Gray led the Volunteers in rushing last season and will join Kennedy Brooks after his year of COVID absence. He looks like he's fitting into the offense really well in spring practice. Very excited to see what he can do for this team. Additionally, we gained an offensive lineman, Wayne Morris, a 5-star prospect and the number 9 overall prospect in 2018, who was an SEC all-freshman team in 2019. And then rounding out the trio is defensive back Keyshawn Lawrence. Now, Keyshawn is going to be a big factor in this Oklahoma defense. Obviously, the offense has been humming for the last few years now. It's just something that we expect at this point for the Sooners offense to be going at full speed. But this will be a huge addition to the Sooners defense, which might help them get over the hump in the playoffs.
You know, it's always exciting to see those fresh faces on the field, but it's also exciting to see a man on a mission, and that's why I'm looking forward to seeing wide receiver Marvin Mims. Now, Mims was a playmaker last year during his freshman season and carries serious potential this year. He broke former Sooner star CeeDee Lamb's record for the most touchdowns by a freshman in a single season, with 9 touchdowns in just 11 games. He had 37 receptions, 610 yards, and 2 100-yard games. This season, his role will look slightly different as he's one of OU's more experienced receivers, and he's been leading the younger guys on the team. He's trusted by Rattler, looked up to by a lot of players, and I think we're going to be looking at a lot of crazy catches and moving chains with Mims this season. Needless to say, Mims was a powerhouse, and after just a few spring practices, rumor has it he's back faster and more powerful this season.
I like both those picks, and we'll touch on the spring game in a little bit. But as far as Sooner standouts go, I know we have so many athletes that are doing well to choose from, but I'm going to switch it up a bit and go with a coach, and that coach has to be Porter Moser. Now, a few weeks ago, we didn't know what was to come for the OU basketball squad, but since the hire of Porter Moser in the few days, it's really stepped up. Over the weekend, the new coach secured one of the top prospects in the country, Tanner Groves, and the week before, he grabbed 3-star point guard Alston Mason. Moser also selected his support staff, which includes 2 Sooner returners and Clayton Custer, his former player at Loyola that led the team to a 2018 Final Four appearance. Now, I know we are all unsure, but it looks like Porter Moser sure came to Norman for some business. I want to know what y'all Sooner standouts are.
Well, for me, I'm going with something we've already touched on. Men's and women's gym had huge weekends, came up just short of that team national title, but they did have some individual national champions, and I'm talking about Gage Dyer from the OU men's gym team. Now, the captain of the gym team suffered an injury earlier this season that he is still struggling with. Sidelined him for 3 weeks, but you would have never known it based off his performance this weekend, where he won the vault by a score of 15.033 on an incredible triple twist vault. Now, his day did not stop there. In fact, his day had only just begun there because he won himself a second individual national championship in the floor exercise with a score of 15.266. The Mountain Pacific Sports Federation vault title winner and College Gymnast Association Specialist of the Year had an incredible season, had an incredible performance at the national championship. He came up just short of that team national title, but with the COVID rules, he does have 1 extra year of eligibility, so he may be back in Norman next year to try and get that ultimate title.
All right. Well, I'm sticking on the mat as well, but moving over to women's gymnastics to look at senior star Anastasia Webb. Now, Webb was a first-team selection across the board. She brought home 3 individual titles on vault, floor, and she won the all-around. This is the 3rd straight year for the all-around crown to come back to Norman. Webb placed 3rd on beam, 7th on bars, and brought her career total to 20 All-American honors, which ranks 2nd all-time in OU history. Now, Webb was a key aspect for this team and definitely paved her way to having a historical senior season and helped lead this team to being the runner-up.
And one thing to note is that the women's gymnasts got the best score at NCAAs that didn't win. So that shows how well they competed this weekend. Now stay with us because when we come back, we'll be talking to big man Isaiah Thomas ahead of the spring game.
Sports Pad is presented by Slim Chickens. Slim Chickens tenders are always fresh, cooked to order, and made from 100% all-natural premium chicken. Buttermilk marinated, hand-breaded, and cooked to perfection every time. Use the Slim Chickens app and order for curbside pickup, delivery, dine-in, or drive-through. Fresh, delicious chicken. Slim Chickens. Get Sooner Sports news and talk on demand whenever you want with the Sooner Sports Podcast. Exclusive interviews, post-game shows, and all things Sooner Sports. Subscribe today at Soonersports.com/podcast. The Sooner Sports Podcast is presented by Riverwind and Allstate.
Rod's Barbershop is an Allen, Texas landmark. It's been around for more than 30 years. Before COVID, most days this shop would be packed with customers.
It's like we've started all over again because we're not cutting as much hair. We can't have the number of people that we used to have. We used to have 25, 30 chairs in here and we'd have them full. We're limited on the number of people that we can get in here in an hour.
Rod's had to hire 2 receptionists due to the changing business model, but that wasn't all.
We've lost barbers just because they're over the age of 70 and being home for 2 months, 3 months, life just didn't feel the same to them. We're in the struggle of, we're shorthanded too.
The layout of the shop changed and new shields were put up, but customers are saying it's still the same old Rods.
Oh, it's always fantastic. I've always had a good haircut and really nice people here. Have no problems with the precautions they took. I really hope they weather the storm of the COVID-19 because this would be a tough place to lose around here.
Though the business is open again, there's been a loss of customers. Barbers are unsure if business will go back to normal, but they're taking it one day at a time. Reporting from Allen, Texas, Will Blessing, OU Nightly.
OU Nightly's Will Blessing has our team coverage from the events that took place.
Outside of the union, a protest is forming against the appearance of Ann Coulter tonight.
I'm here for women's equality, for racial equality, for LGBTQ plus equality. She is actively quoted saying things that are against that.
It's not that I don't like her, it's that I do not feel safe with her being here.
The protest started at 6:30 outside the union and moved inside. The members of the protest said that one of the main reasons they were there was because they believed Ann Coulter does not represent the values of the university and that they believe Turning Point USA should not have invited her to campus.
I think Ann Coulter shouldn't be here. I mean, there's a difference between free speech and hate speech, and I think all she advocates for is hate speech, and that doesn't belong on campus. I understand they have the right to have their free speech again, and they have the right to have their own opinions and everything, but we, at OU, we come here because we believe that it's supposed to be a diverse institution and we should all be here, united.
While the protest was ongoing, members of the Proud Boys, a white supremacist group, showed up at the union. They walked around the union before leaving, nothing was said, and no violent altercations happened. This ended the protest, with protesters leaving in groups. While the protest did end at the union, student sentiment does remain. Will Blessing, OU Nightly.
When you think of psychics and fortune tellers, you may think of crystal balls and smoke. But really, they're just like you and me, and like us, have had to deal with COVID-19.
In this brick house on the south side of OKC lives Stephen Dillard Carroll, also known as a traveling tarot. Dillard Carroll has worked as a tarot reader and spiritual advisor for 13 years.
And I taught myself. And then I started reading for myself, and then I started reading for friends and family. And over the years, people would say to me, well, Stephen, you're really good at this. You should think about doing it for a living.
True to the name, the traveling tarot would travel, giving readings at parties throughout Oklahoma. In addition to tarot card readings, Dillard Carroll does energy healing and dice readings. But when COVID-19 came to the U.S., the traveling tarot had to stop traveling.
Fortunately for Stephen, COVID-19 hasn't affected his traveling tarot business that much, thanks to adjustments he made before the pandemic.
I closed down from March until July, and a lot of the business that I've been doing, phone readings, Skype readings, email readings, those are all pre-COVID. And so if I've seen a jump in anything over COVID, it's been those virtual services that I offer.
These virtual readings have been done across the U.S. and even the world, with Dillard Carroll giving a reading to somebody in India. Dillard Carroll also does readings on YouTube and posts them every Monday. A majority of business now comes from his virtual readings, with barely anybody coming into the house. But for those in-person readings, masks are required. Will Blessing, OU Nightly.